Welcome to documentary about documentation of indigenous knowledge and practices that cushion indigenous communities against climate change. Mr. Eric Gang, a researcher from Cameroon, introduced the project and the importance of this knowledge for improved livelihood.
Climate change is a defining issue of our era. Its impact spans from international down to national and local levels. The seriousness of this issue can be attested by the recent Conference of Parties on Climate Change that held in Paris, dubbed COP21, where 190 states met and agreed on binding obligations to put a check on this devastating phenomenon that has an impact on the livelihood of communities, given that agriculture, which is the source of livelihood, particularly for rural communities, solely depends on weather factors that are influenced by the climate. Interestingly, most of this global discourse have not recognized the place of local communities as contributors to finding a solution to this global phenomenon. We as Australia alumni, we want to be most grateful to the Australian government that sponsored us through the Australia Award Scheme to embark on different postgraduate studies related to the climate change phenomenon. And we want to be most appreciative for the Australian government to have supported us through a project we initiated that touches 3 countries, Cameroon, Tanzania and Zambia, where we wanted to quantify and qualify local indigenous knowledge and practices on climate change so that we can find a way to complement that or to match that with scientifically generated data on climate change from meteorological stations and other research institutes to find a lasting solution to this problem that helps communities cope with the unavoidable changes they experience at the community level. We are most excited because we've engaged with communities at grassroots level and they've been able to share with us some of their experiences they've passed from generation to generation, which they've successfully used to cope with unavoidable long-term weather situations, which of course it's part of the climate change phenomenon. We are excited because we've set up a community of practice in Zambia, Tanzania and Cameroon on the use of local indigenous knowledge and practices on climate change. We are equally excited by the fact that we are speaking to other alumni in other countries who have been engaged in the same sector, and we're finding a way to have a community of practice throughout Africa on the use of local indigenous knowledge and practices. And ultimately, we are excited by the fact that communities will see themselves as co-creators and not only as victims, but people who are able to contribute to finding solutions to this global challenge.
This project is a product of the recent Mining and Agriculture Symposium in Uganda that took place in 2014 and organized by Australian Awards and was attended by 150 delegates, including 100 alumni from programs funded by Australian government. Participants from 3 African countries, that is Cameroon, Tanzania, and Zambia, convened in a session on this thematic area of climate change and indigenous knowledge, re-echoed the need for greater consideration of local indigenous knowledge in policy dialogue and initiatives towards climate change adaptation to marginal communities. Some of these agriculture-dependent communities are quite remote and heavily relied on the use of indigenous knowledge and practice through the food production chain to enhance their food security. These practices and strategies have been transferred from one decade to another and from generation to generation through a process of mutual and collective learning that involve orally and documentation have grossly been neglected. It was unanimously agreed that The wealth of local indigenous knowledge and the practices have already existed in different agriculture-dependent communities across Africa, with improper coverage by scientific communities. In addition, it was observed that, although indigenous knowledge has been recognized as a resource, it has, however, been given a tokenistic consideration in decision-making processes that are related to climate change, while business as usual still continues. The participant thought that there is a need to engage in further evidence-based research with local communities to share cross-border knowledge, best practice, and publication that involving a wide number of stakeholders to consolidate existing knowledge to enhance its scaling up. This small project was therefore funded by Australian government in a collaboration with host institutions in respective countries to further gather, evaluate, and compare, including disseminate, evidence in appropriate form to key audiences in 3 African countries with a view to strengthening the capacity of those agrarian communities and the other development stakeholders to develop and adopt policies that integrate local indigenous knowledge with scientific tools that will help agriculture become more resilient and productive under the changing climate. Therefore, we conducted a small project in Tanzania, Cameroon, and Zambia with the aim to document local farmer-led adaptation practices and local approaches and tools that cushion the communities against climatic risk. And also we had the objective to conduct a community-based analysis on action that co-create knowledge on climate change mitigation and adaptation with focus to local indigenous knowledge. We conducted a comparative analysis of findings in 3 countries to identify best practice and addressing challenges of indigenous knowledge. And lastly, the project aimed to disseminate the knowledge to key audiences in appropriate form. If it's for research, for example, we aimed to publish papers, and if it's for local farmers, we aimed to compile the compendiums of skills and practices with local language so that they can learn their skills and pass it to another generation. As it is stored in books, it's expected to last longer. When you look at the study sites, for Cameroon, the project site was conducted on western highlands of Cameroon, an ecologically fragile area characterized by high savanna and mountain forest. For Tanzania, the project was located at Mkuranga district in Pwani region of Tanzania. And when you look at Zambia, it was conducted in Mpika district in the Wuvu wards. When you look at the method used to collect our data, we preferred a purposeful sampling method with focus to climate change hotspot areas to identify and engage targeted communities, individuals, and groups through administration of questionnaires and focus group discussion. We administer almost a total numbers of 600 questionnaires in 3 locations. The focus group discussion were conducted in 3 locations as well, and the analysis was done thematically by categorizing data into major themes. We used Excel and FTS analysis in order to produce summaries in graphs, frequency, and percentage. When we look at the project achievement, the project has created awareness to communities on the need to document the skills for future generation because this is the only skills available in the areas they live. The project has managed to document the skills and compiled them in a compendium that shall be distributed to the community to enhance the sustainability of the skills. The project has created awareness to international community through publication of findings to international journals, and it is expected that there will be a numbers of conference presentations to share the skills to diverse audiences. We have managed to learn a number of things when we conducted this project. Although this was a pilot project targeting few communities in one of the major food baskets in Cameroon, Tanzania, and Zambia, by making the finding public and engaging with the diverse stakeholders, this has generated a nationwide interest in placing local community contribution in the fight against drivers of climate change and adapting to unavoidable impact. Carrying out this project in a single country would not have given opportunity for comparative analysis across different countries and regions in Africa. This has been an added value to this pilot research. Results were compared between Cameroon, Tanzania, and Zambia, have some valuable insight and have been practices that can be transferred across the board. However, there are many such practices that this pilot project did not identify due to resources and time constraints. It is anticipated that with the buying on additional support from our country's government and other interested institutions and donors, we will be able to engage in a more comprehensive research to bring in this community contribution to the wider international audience. When we look at the project sustainability, the project is centered on empowerment, placing agrarian communities as a co-creator of global solutions to climate change. Firstly, the knowledge generated and compiled in a simple manual shall be useful to communities, and the practices shall be scaled up for benefit of these communities and those beyond the project area. The community of practice developed among the group of organized farmers, therefore, stay in the project, and this is a very good sustainability strategy. Secondly, we see that the ultimate aim of this project is to transform local indigenous knowledge and practice into business and educational opportunities for the participating community. We'll see that as the business opportunities, once the local indigenous knowledge and practice are packaged, they will be used as a leverage to promote climate tourism in these communities. And the revenue generated will contribute to the socioeconomic well-being of the communities themselves. And lastly, the local indigenous knowledge and practice can be as an education opportunity that shall provoke interest from the research world with more resources destined to scale up the research, and this domain shall ultimately benefit participating communities and adapting to climate change that will help the communities securing their food and reduce poverty.